This meeting is being recorded.
There's a recording starting. Okay, now it's recording. All right, my name is Quinn Wickham. I am proposal manager from the Research Development Office in KED, and we'll be talking about the NIH Directors Program and some of the awards that are provided with this. With me, I have Rachel Levinson, and Haley Ball is in the back there, that she'll be talking about some of the limited submissions we have. And I'm going to just start here by showing you that maybe I think I've lost. Thank you. So in this, we'll start with an overview of the program. Then I'll go into the awards. We have a little discussion with some awardees that we have here, and I'll show you some additional resources. This information, pretty much most of the information that's provided is on their website, and while NIH has a very vast website, they actually do provide quite a bit of information on that. And we will provide these slides to the participants later. So with that, what I want to do is just have Rachel kind of come up and talk to us a little bit about the Directors Program itself.
Great, thank you, Quinn. First of all, good morning, and thank you to everybody who came in person and online. I'm happy to have you here. Particularly want to give you exposure to this program that NIH has put in place largely to counter some of the concerns that have been voiced about it being overly conservative, not getting into some of the more exciting areas and innovative areas of research. So they put this program in place several years ago, and ASU has been very fortunate and to be successful, particularly in the category of the new innovator awardees. So we are going to talk to some of those people in a little bit, and I won't go over that too much. Gwen is going to do an overview of each of the different award categories. But I'm primarily a cheerleader for this program, for the set of awards, because they are really prestigious, they're highly competitive, they are intended to be very innovative. So the idea is that you are proposing something that's really new. And I think that that's very well suited to the ASU model. And we hope that we'll be successful not just in new innovators, but in the other three awards as well. The Transformative Research Award is the only one that's available to teams. The others are all for individuals. So we're going to talk about that a little bit. But given that we have such a wonderful reputation for doing interdisciplinary team research, I thought that's someone that we really ought to be focusing on. And we have not gotten one of those where we've led it. The Early Independence Award is a very useful recruitment tool to bring in people from other institutions who are capable of skipping the postdoc period. So we want to reach out to other labs and other institutions and within to be able to get people who are capable of taking on that level of responsibility. So I'm going to hand it back to Quinn to talk about each individual category, but what I really want to say is that it's important to focus on what NIH is looking for, which is the very innovative research. So it's not intended to be something where you're building on what you've done before. There's a fine line to walk between having no preliminary data and demonstrating to the reviewers and to NIH that you are capable of carrying out what you're proposing. But some of the people who have already danced that line will talk about that this morning as well. Again, thanks for coming.
All right, thank you, Rachel. A couple of things that I wanted to bring up real quick before diving into the two awards. Rachel's talked a lot about the innovation. The other item that the Directors Program really pushes through all of its different award categories is diversity. And their definition of diversity, as they've written down, says diverse backgrounds include underrepresented groups in research, including underrepresented racial and ethnic groups, persons with disabilities, and women. So it is something that they strongly focus on each one of these. So if I don't know, just more food for thought. So the 4 awards, I'll go into each one of them individually: the Early Independence, Transformative Research Award, Pioneer, and the New Innovator Award program. We'll start with, just as Rachel mentioned, there's a slightly different focus and a different sort of target in terms of the investigator for each one. So we'll start with the Early Independence Award. This one is really targeting graduate students with the idea of foregoing the postdoc period, as Rachel mentioned, and launching into a research-intensive career. There's a couple of ways we could look at this. One is that if faculty here have graduate students that will be going into that are sort of exceptional students that could actually be that eligible for this award, and they might want to get it, start on it, and probably would end up taking the award and going elsewhere. But the other thing that we would like to think about is the sort of idea of a recruitment tool. And this might be where, as investigators on this campus, you might want to contact colleagues at other universities and ask them, do you have exceptional graduate students who might be interested in applying for this? And then bringing them here to the ASU campus. While they sort of show that they want a sort of record of productivity here, they're also looking for somebody that has not had research independence. So it really is kind of a student that they're looking for. They've got quite a few requirements that they set apart here. Probably the main takeaway of this is that, again, what I mentioned is they don't want somebody that has shown independence before, so in some sort of mentored or learning program. The FOA and the requirements can be somewhat confusing, so just make sure you read through those very carefully. All right. We have a timeline. Part of it is because this is a limited submission. This is the only limited submission out of the 4 programs. And actually, what I'd like to do is have Haley talk a little bit about this limited submission.
Sure. I'm Haley, the Limited Submissions Manager. If you're reviewing this opportunity and you have students who are interested in it, ASU is eligible to submit 2. It follows the regular limited submissions timeline, guidelines, 3 to 5 page application, 2-page CV, budget summary, the normal process. It goes under review 9 weeks prior to the sponsor deadline, allowing a review period, and then about an 8-week preparation period for the person approved to go ahead and prepare their application. It's standard, it's the regular process. If there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them, but it just follows the normal guidelines.
Okay, great, thank you. I'll have all of our email addresses at the end as well, so if you need to contact Haley or myself or Rachel about any of these, they'll be there. Okay, with ASU, we do have one faculty member here who had received this award in 2013. I think what's kind of interesting about Meg is that she got her PhD in 2012, and she is now an associate professor in her program. So, and in that time, she was brought in as a director of a program. This has really helped. I suspect this award has really helped launch her career and provided a pretty quick trajectory into her tenure. So it's a great way to get started. The program officer contact is there. So that's going to be important for anybody who's interested in going after this. And plus, there's a letter of intent as well. All right, so the next program is the Transformative Research Award. This is really looking at very risky projects that the other institutes might kind of balk at funding because of the risk level. There's actually no cap to this. The 2.2 to 5 million is about the average over the past few years that they've been awarding. But they're significant awards. Again, these are high risk projects that a lot of the other institutes may not be, that may kind of be hesitant to fund because of the nature of the risk involved. Some of these ideas may be untested and risky. If this is going to be a team proposal, it would be prudent to get started as early as possible, like any other team proposal. And the program officer, again, one thing to note here is that the next 3 awards, you'll notice, will be the same program officer, but the emails are different. And we don't, as Rachel mentioned, we don't have any ASU experience with this particular award, leading it. I do want to mention that there is somebody from U of A. If you are interested in this and feel like you want to contact somebody at least close. All right, the next award is the Pioneer Award Program. While the last one really focused on high risk, this one focuses on sort of taking a successful independent researcher and shifting their trajectory, sort of pivoting their research into something new. It is pretty significant funding for this. Again, this is about pivoting your project into something new. They are not looking for a continuation of your existing research. This is where you've probably had a lot of success at working with in a particular direction, and you really want to shift. So in that respect, that your evidence of previous success is very important in this. It's high effort. So really you have to think about committing yourself to that. And again, the program officer, but a different email address. Okay. Yes. Wait. Well, since we like to capture the questions, yeah. Sorry.
So you said that had 51% effort. So what would you be doing the other percent of the time? So that's 51% research.
That's
effort.
51% on this project.
Okay.
Right. So what if you have other projects you may be working on, or it could be teaching, or yeah, you just need to commit that 51%. And for this, yeah, we don't have any prior experience at ASU. Yeah. Okay. The next one I'm going to talk about is a new Innovator Award, and I actually need to let one of our speakers know. So give me just a moment. Is it Nick? Okay. Well, I just needed to let Nick know he's I told him I would let him know when we got to sort of this section of this. All right. So the New Innovator Award. This is an early career award. Oh, maybe because somebody came in.
No, it's yours.
Okay. All right. We're good. All right. So it's pretty significant funding for junior investigators. Again, innovative ideas, exceptional researchers. So as an early stage investigator, what they're looking for, what they have a specific definition of that, and it's within 10 years of your PhD, is what they refer to as in terms of the ESI. There are some exceptions to that 10 years. You know, you should talk to the program officer about that. I mean, if you've had a child or something, they'll extend that, right? If you've had a break in your research career within that time. Again, the program officer and a different email address. LJ, can you let me know when, if somebody comes, if Nick comes on? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So we have 4 awardees here at ASU that have gotten this award. As Rachel mentioned, we've been successful in this and getting some truly innovative new faculty members. Sarah is here. Nick is coming in on Zoom, and I think Rizal, yes, he's here too. What I would like to do is I'd like to get their experiences with this award, and I have a few questions that I'll ask, and then we can kind of open it up if you have any other specific questions. And so, do we have you have a mic there? Okay. Okay, good, great. Nick is here. Okay, so as I said, I have a few questions, and if what I'd like to do is I'll ask the question and then just sort of pass the mic. You know, let's maybe do Sarah and then Zal and then Nick. Nick, are you online?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Oh, wait a minute. Okay.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Okay, hold on. Yes, yeah, Nick, we're working on getting your audio connected.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Okay. All right. So first question, what 2 to 3 points do you believe were critical to your getting this award? Okay.
Okay, I guess in all seriousness, I think the more, so a little bit of background. So I received my award in 2014. So sadly, my grant is ending, my 5 years of this wonderful, awesome award is ending in 25 days. I know that because I'm spending out the accounts right now. I guess in acquiring that. So thinking back, I was in my 3rd year of my assistant professor position. So I had submitted an R21, a couple R21s, had started to get some feedback on some projects and really had an idea of which projects were gaining traction with reviewers. And so that, I think that was one thing that helped. And the second thing then it was one of the first projects that I basically hit the ground running and had some level of preliminary data, and I would say a more clear vision of where that kind of the trajectory of that project. So I, again, had written some grants on it, had a little bit more of a clear vision of where I wanted it to go. And so in talking with my program officer at the time, who was from NDS, so Neurological Institute of Neurodegenerative Diseases and Stroke, she actually thought I should apply for an R1. I thought I did not have enough preliminary data for an R1, and so happy medium to me was basically, okay, let's really blow this project and this idea up and amplify it to a DP2 award project proposal. And so I did that in a matter of, made that decision in about a month. I would not recommend doing that. But again, I had some previous grants that I had written that basically I could start to work from. And then basically what you do, so I did not talk to Robbie, the program officer, before I submitted. I would recommend, actually, now that I know him and know the program, I would really recommend talking to him first. He's been very helpful. He takes time. You schedule 30-minute, 15-minute meetings. I mean, you go online, schedule them, and actually his feedback, he's very direct, he's very honest, and gives you really good feedback. And so I'd really recommend that now. If you talk to your general program officers at your respective institutes, they're probably not going to have much, at least in my experience, they did not have much input for that. So they really weren't helpful because they don't, this is out of the Common Fund or the Office of the Director. So their insight and input into these awards is minimal. And then just key points then, I knew I had some colleagues of mine that had received the award. So I was able to look, the format is significantly different than a standard proposal. So there's no aims page. You basically I basically wrote the vision for my lab. And so I said, okay, this is the problem space I'm working on. And it was a true, basically I went back and started just writing a true essay of, here's why I'm doing what I'm doing. Here's the problem space I'm working in. Here are the 3 barriers that I see for this problem space. And here are the 3 ways that I'm going to solve them. Again, and so each one of those barrier approaches that I took was, could be an R01 in and of itself, essentially. And that was the only feedback that I'd gotten on mine, was that it was an overly ambitious project, but that's basically what they're supposed to be. And so in that, I basically I had 2 other or previous grants that folks had shared with me, some of my friends, colleagues had shared, and that was a similar approach that they had taken. And then with that, these are single investigator grants, but you can discuss your collaborative network that enable you to achieve and work in those problem spaces. So I did that and said, hey, I've got a pediatric neurosurgeon that's on my team, and so you can basically say you have these key collaborators and key networks for you to complete and demonstrate the feasibility to achieve your project. So those are, I'd say, the key points that I had. I'll stop there for now.
Thank you. Yours on.
So my name is Rizal. I will be finishing my 3rd year here at ASU. I started my lab in July 2016, and I submitted my application one summer after my first summer at ASU, so in 2017, and I got the grant like in October. In terms of funding, at that point I had 0 submission to NIH, 0 fellowship money from undergrad, graduate study, and fellowship. So I was really green, but I knew I had a good idea. I knew that because, this advice may not apply to you, not because your idea is not good, but because I got lucky. So the starting document was my job application, and I got a pretty good number of interviews. Many people that I respect pick up my application and gave me interviews. So I knew that the projects in my personal statement or research statement, they are good. So that was the starting document. And then when I apply for a job, I wrote basically more than 10 pages documents. And then when I submit it to those search committees, I revised it to 5 pages. So for this proposal, I expanded a little bit because I already had 10 pages commented in my LaTeX file. But how did I arrive to those projects? I can probably share with you. I'm just a mediocre scientist. So what I did as a postdoc is I had a weekly brainstorming sessions with my student outside the lab. When I was in Michigan, there was a free bagel every Wednesday. So I was poor. So I took one of my graduate students and we brainstormed every week, and we launched a company. We came up with ideas that became a paper that became the first aim. Another discussion, so that led to aim 1. Aim 2, I did deep literature research and find a gap in the literature in our knowledge. For aim 3, I basically bugged a seminar speaker, and I had a 15-minute discussion with him. And based on, this is his own word, he said, like, yeah, we came up with 2 revolutionary ideas. When he said we, is he, not me. So I used one of them. So that's, if I can share how to arrive to those ideas, those are the things that I did as a postdoc. But I didn't do anything when I was a faculty. I just recycle the document. To make it even worse, I used this is serious, right? I used identical document for my career, and I'm an honest person, so I didn't even change the title. So this like personal statement, NSF career, and NIH. Probably I'm the worst speaker for this information session. I didn't even change the title because I want to be honest. I want to be open and identify. Thankfully, NSF didn't give me career money, so that's good. So I'm really happy that they rejected my career proposal because I got that word, I think, in February or something. So I can get money from NIH. In terms of the scope of the proposal, it is similar like Sarah. It is basically overly ambitious. Basically three different projects. And I think that's how I got the grant. In term of score, I got perfect score, which is very rare. So I got impact score 10. And probably because of that, there was a Nature conference 2 weeks ago at Duke. So they invited 12 out of 55 new innovator, and mine got picked up again. So it was really difficult to present. The good thing is I got the money, so that's good. But the bad thing is when Duke University asked me to present my new innovator proposal, it was really difficult because it was basically 3 different topics. So that was good. Another thing I also did what Sarah did, which is asking many samples of funded proposals, and I give mine to everybody basically. And when I give my proposals, I also try to be useful. I also attach PowerPoint, like what I did, how I came up with those ideas, because I'm people can go to NIH Reporter and find my name, so I assume I will keep on giving that document. So if you are interested, I'm happy to share. I think I guess I just want to thank ASU and NIH for the funding and my previous students for helping me arriving to those ideas. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and all right, we're gonna try Nick.
Hello.
Oh, great, great.
Can you guys hear me? Everything good?
Yes, perfect. Go ahead.
Hi, everyone. So I'm Nick Stephanopoulos, and actually, kind of fittingly, I'm at the NIH High Risk, High Reward Symposium right now, which is the new innovators and the Pioneer and these other program winners to come to a conference basically and present research. And so my experience in some ways was different than Sarah and Rizal's, in the sense that the project that I proposed was something completely different from what my lab was doing. Based on the skills of my lab, but the project itself had not been written up previously, was not my proposals, was something that I kind of sat down and thought, okay, what would fit this mechanism? Something really high risk, really high reward, of course. And really the advice that I got that was a guiding principle for me was propose something that probably won't work, but if it does, will revolutionize biology or medicine. So that kind of, was, I kind of thought along those lines, okay, gotta keep push it, make it more big picture, really, swing for the fences, so to speak. And yeah, basically though, I applied in my third year. So the same year as Rizal, but I'm a year ahead of him. So when I applied, basically I was, I'd gotten a small grant, but a bunch of other grants had been rejected. And I was thinking like, wow, NIH is great because it has many cycles, but I don't have the preliminary data for this stuff, and it'll take a while to boot up. So this was the perfect mechanism for proposing something really exciting, something that you can kind of let your imagination run wild and really try to do something amazing. So that's kind of how I put together mine. And, as Rizal said, I also got kind of lucky and feel very fortunate for that. But it was a very different project from what I was working on. And I think they actually liked that as well, because they part of what they want in this mechanism is, and part of what you kind of explain in the document, is that you try to push beyond what your current area is, something new, something that's going to fund you as an investigator to broaden your scope, do new things, do exciting things, and things that they would not be able to fund you to do through the regular mechanisms. I think that's also very important, something that you couldn't write an R21 or an R01 and do, something that really requires this leap of faith in you as the investigator. Aside from that, I also had many examples, I think 7 or 8 examples of successful proposals, and they're all over the map in terms of style. So Sarah said it was like an essay. I saw some of those. I personally, the ones that I liked the best looked very much like a traditional R01 grant, where it was like aim 1, aim 2, aim 3. Now they're higher risk, they're higher reward, and they're much, bigger. But mine was really with this one specific project that was broken up into sub-aims that were kind of sequential, but it was not 3 different projects the way that Rizal or Sarah's were. It was one sort of unified project. So I think the point is, don't feel too constrained by any formatting or by any sort of specific format. Whatever fits best for you and to get your vision across is probably will work best. Honestly, it was really the grant that I spent the most time on, editing it and kind of revising it over many drafts, but also had the most fun on, because I learned a lot. I looked into new areas. I really was able to sort of say, look, here's a unique problem that I think I can tackle that very few other people could. And if it works, it would be really awesome. So I really had a lot of fun with it.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Nick. One of the questions I actually did want to make sure that we discussed was this idea of preliminary data, because it can be, we're never quite sure. And so I'm glad that you all addressed that in some way. Is there anything else you'd like to add about sort of the question of how you address preliminary data? Do you want to just, Sarah?
Yeah, I mean, I did have some preliminary data. Like I said, it was a project that I had kind of started, and so there were certain, I would say, fundamental data that I had to demonstrate feasibility that I could complete, and that I had the skills and the tools necessary to conduct the research, so that it wasn't completely like I wasn't going into a completely new area. There's areas that I did not have expertise in, but to show that I basically had kind of the underlying skill sets to begin to pursue that. And so I think to me, those were the key aspects, as well as I had some, could draw on some publications that I had to show that.
Thank you. That's all.
Yeah, I also put preliminary data. At that point, the paper wasn't published, but I put preliminary data for M1. For M2, no preliminary data. For M3, I adapted figures from published papers that show that it's feasible. So in addition to preliminary data, what I noticed from the review results from the panel is that they pay attention to my track record. So I'm fortunate that I tend to pick area that not many labs are interested. The way I said, if it's obvious, then the specialists, the people with money and army of postdocs will win. So throughout my career, I pick areas that could be difficult, but no one really pursue it. So the referee likes it. So in a way that is kind of preliminary data. Basically, I had track record of starting something different.
Okay, great. Nick?
Yeah, so I was, because I had a little bit of preliminary data, it's just to sort of show the feasibility of the idea. Now, not the core idea, to show the feasibility of the techniques. So for example, that I could make the molecules I was claiming, that I had some ideas about, how to get started. But the reviewer specifically said that, one of the weaknesses was that I was proposing something that had the core idea, there was no preliminary data, which I found a bit of a paradox because, they say no preliminary data, something high risk, yet they kind of complained that there wasn't enough preliminary data to show that it would work. Obviously, it worked out fine in the end, but a little strange. That being said, they all did comment that I was clearly, able to carry out this research and uniquely situated to bring together the different areas. So like Rizal said, I think the fact that, they really, really do look very carefully at your record, at what you're proposing. They don't want something that's completely, unrealistic for you to do, that even if it's high impact, you can never do it. So it was finding that balance between something that I proved that I probably could do, but something that hasn't been done enough so that it's still very novel, that I think is the key with the preliminary data.
Great. That helps a lot on that particular requirement or what they say in the FOA there. Sarah, you kind of talked a little bit about your experience with the program officers and the one with the Institute, and then actually talking to one out of the director's program. So I guess I'm kind of wondering what was sort of specifically helpful about talking to the program officer in the director's program, and now that you've sort of had this experience, would you ask anything different? Would you have gone back and said, "Oh, I wish I had asked them this"?
No. Well, so I did not contact Ravi before I submitted it.
Okay.
The idea. But I have talked to him since because I'm interested in pursuing potentially the Transformative Research Award. So talking to him about some ideas with that, and then I've attended the conference that Nick is at, and kind of chatted with him about things. But and Ravi, he's just very helpful. Like I said, he takes the time. I mean, it's very short, very direct comments, but things that would ask and things that he asks are just whether or not, so is this truly a high risk, high reward? And what is the true definition of that? So let's say you're doing, like some biomarker discovery for Alzheimer's. Well, that's fantastic for Alzheimer's, but really, that's maybe more aligns with a specific R01 or the more traditional applications. But if you're developing a new pipeline for novel biomarker discovery for any disease, right, some technology or something like that, then that would be more transformative, right? So really, what are you developing that can really completely, like I think Nick said, really have just a profound impact on the way biology or medicine is conducted. And so really kind of getting you to kind of rethink and verbalize and say, this is my transformative idea. And he'll be like, meh, is it really? So I think in terms of that, the general program directors, program officers, I mean, I think they're great within each institute. And I've heard, so actually my postdoc mentor had received the Transformative Research Award. Was a leader on that, so I've talked to him a little bit about that. And he said actually talking to the program officers at different institutes was a little bit more helpful for that award, because my understanding of that is that the institutes are a little bit more involved and have a little bit more input on which projects, because they are interdisciplinary. And so what are the actual relevant topics that would bubble up and require such a team effort for a larger award. So he said that was instrumental, kind of trying to lobby and say, hey, yeah, this is important. You know, here's why your institute should be conscious of this, and this is why your institute, you know, he said he did a little bit of that initially. So.
All right, thank you. Zal?
I don't know if I told you that I'm a mediocre PI, so I didn't talk to program manager. I did talk to him after I received my score, because I asked my mentor I should do that, and he was really helpful. He basically said I had better time. I had much better things to do than worrying about the proposal, but it didn't help actually, because after I received the score, right after I received the score, I looked much younger than this, and then I spent months and months worrying whether I would get the grant or not, and Nick made fun of me because I got good score. I got perfect score. So I didn't talk to the program manager. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, if you had to do it again.
If I do it again, of course. I mean, it's a lot of money. It's a nice support. I assume it will help my career. I hope it will help my career. I would talk to Ravi, another program manager. I would ask other people to read my draft, because what happened is in the last hour before I submitted, I did replace all, and it generated a lot of typos. Again, I didn't have much experience in grant writing, so don't do replace all in the last minute. And I also came to this. I didn't go to this. I didn't go to this session. So if I had to do it again, I would go to this session.
Great, thank you. Nick, do you have anything about contacting the program officer before or after?
Like Rizal, I didn't contact anyone before. You know, I'm sure that would have been helpful. Though at the same time, I think the fact that I didn't overthink it too much before I applied, I just kind of said, okay, what's the most interesting idea? I didn't go back and forth a bunch of times and give yourself a chance to sort of doubt yourself. Might have been useful. But after the fact, I did contact him after I got my score. My score was not nearly as good as Rizal's, so he's right that I definitely told him that he needs to stop the stressing because I'm going to kill him. He sits right next door to me. And Ravi was very direct and very direct in the sense of like, well, I honestly, you're kind of on the border and I can't tell you, whether you're going to get it or not. And maybe you should be pessimistic about it, which was totally freaky to hear. Twice as much then. But honestly, he is very direct. He's very blunt. And I've actually met him a couple times. So I met him at a conference in the fall, and I met him, again here at the symposium. And he's really wonderful. He's really interested about science, and he really does, like Sarah said, take the time to meet with you. And so I would highly recommend that if I were doing it again, I would definitely contact him. I don't think it's very useful to contact the specific institute program managers, because if this is, they have a special group to look at these, and they're kind of all over the map in terms of where they could fit. And then only kind of after the fact do they farm it out to the institutes to administer it. So I don't think that would actually be very useful. But yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you. You know, at this point, what I'd like to do is just see if you have anything else that you would like to add. Yes, yes, please do. Absolutely.
So my question was, so the traditional NIH awards are, you can't have these overlapping aims. Like I do this, and then I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do this. And I believe it was Nick who was saying that he kind of had these sequential aims. And I was wondering if, because I would be kind of building to something that was bigger, and I was wondering if there was a feeling that that still applied in these, because they are these high risk, high reward kinds of situations. So it's like, well, if the first thing fails, the others might not work out too. Like, is that something we should be cognizant of, or is it okay to kind of build this? First, we're going to do this, and when this works, we're going to do this, and when this works, etc.
So, I mean, I can speak to that just because mine was so, one after the other. And what I'll say is that mine built up from the basic idea to a very simple test system to a slightly more complicated system. Because I was basically trying to make a system to synthesize full proteins from synthetic peptides. And so I built up from very, very simple molecules to slightly more complicated, to a small protein, to a big protein, to a really big protein, to a membrane protein. That being said, I had an extensive section on alternative approaches, pitfalls, alternate ways to do it. So just because my aims were kind of in progression, within each of those aims, there was then many contingency plans, which the reviewer specifically said that I had thought out every possible contingency and plan to minimize the risk. So I even though the aims can build on each other, I think they do want to see as much as you can minimizing the risk, even within this mechanism.
Yeah, and I would say mine was not that way, but everything hinged on a fundamental technology. And so basically I kind of had this central, and actually I have a central picture of kind of this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to discover this. And from that, I'm going to build off of this. And so I guess the assumption was that, well, we don't do that, but that's where I had that preliminary data to say, hey, I already have one thing, these two things to already start with. I'm going to build this repertoire and build this library. And so I think having a little bit of that, just kind of sense that, hey, I have an inkling that I'm going to build this foundation, that there is something there. Not necessarily, it could be from you or it could be from the literature. And then, as Nick said, just kind of discuss, not just alternative approaches, but what I guess really highlight what you will learn and how that will impact kind of the field moving forward. So even if it does fail, do you learn something significant still? So I would say that.
Yeah, so for my DP2 proposal, I proposed 3 different projects, so with very minimal overlap. And I also, like Nick and Sarah, I discussed potential pitfalls, alternate strategies, background, and knowledge gap.
Yeah, I would imagine this section in particular addressing those potential pitfalls and alternative strategies would be really important for any of the high risk.
And one thing is that the M2 and 3 are connected. They have the same theme. M1 is a little bit different, but I just massage the assay such that they are kind of connected. And the referees actually pick them up. They said like the connection between M1 and M2 and 3 is tenuous, but I did it anyway.
And the other thing I would say is that when you attend these conferences, I'm sure Nick has probably experienced this now, you'll get people stand up there and like, this is what I was funded to do, but this is what I'm actually doing, right? And some people go off on complete, and that's one of the things I really like is the flexibility with this funding, is that you're not tied to specific aims. You're tied to kind of more of a vision. They're funding you as the investigator. It's flexible money. So it really allows you to pursue and be kind of more nimble in terms of pursuing different opportunities, which is usually what happens no matter where the money comes from, but you can be more open about it.
Yeah, Rizal and I were at the NIH about and too, 3 months ago, and we all met with the assistant director, who basically said, here's a secret that's not a secret, right? Write whatever will get you the money, and then do whatever you want to actually do. And I feel like with this mechanism, it's actually even more so, where they know that a lot of these aren't going to work. By definition, they're high risk projects, but they fund the investigator as much as they do the project. It's not agnostic. They comment a lot. And I remember in my thing, I was surprised by how much they commented on me, on my training, on my my background, my papers, my sort of skill set. And so I get the feeling that they say, okay, this is a project, we want you to try this project, but we understand that it won't work, but we trust that you will take it into a cool direction anyway, even if that's very, very different. And Sarah's exactly right, that half the talks are like, here, this is what I started working on, didn't work out, but here's this other super cool thing that I'm now doing. And absolutely nobody bats an eye. I think they expect that.
Comment on that point, this is Rachel, that on this particular program, the reviewers are given very explicit instructions that they are not to get overly picky about those kinds of questions, and that it is considered high risk, high reward compared to the reviews of other programs at NIH. There is one other program that does this, and it's the R35, R34 and 35. That is intended to fund the person and not that project. And so it does give you quite a bit of flexibility as well. And there are two versions of that with one of the institutes. The National Institute of General Medical Sciences has one for established investigators and these are called MIRAs, and one for early stage investigators. So if you're someone who is at a more junior level and has an idea, but you do have you have not gotten NIH grants in the past, you can qualify for an early stage investigator R35, and I would definitely recommend that you look at that. Other institutes are using that mechanism as well, not necessarily with the early stage investigator advantage, but right now there's an open call from the National Institute of Neurology and NINDS, something, and stroke. Neurological diseases and disorders and stroke. They have an open call right now for their R35 mechanism. So that's another one to look at if you feel that you're not quite perfectly positioned for the high risk, high reward program.
Thank you.
Oh, one other thing that you might, the awards that have been given out under these programs are available to look up on the NIH Reporter tool. And it's a little bit clunky, but Gwen is going to do something to explain to people how you can look up things on Reporter, and it can give you ideas of what has been funded. You can also see on the Common Fund page that you put the link up for at the very beginning what the previous awards have been. So you can look at the kinds of things that were, for example, very clinically oriented or not. Look at the ones that are more recent, because I think the whole program has evolved somewhat since it began, and you can see where NIH is going with this. But they are really trying to get away from the very conservative programs that they've had in some cases.
And the one other thing to add is when you're so like Nick said, they really kind of review and make sure that you are the right person to be leading this program that you're proposing. But so I actually almost didn't submit to it because I didn't think I had the high enough flashy publications. I had a good publication record, but I didn't have Nature papers. I had some in the works, but nothing yet. And so I almost didn't submit. So I would say, make sure you just kind of frame in your, I basically just kind of said, this is the training I've received. This is why I'm the only person that can do this important project. And so just really kind of highlight some of those things. I think now since I submitted, they've switched the bio sketches so where you can provide that detailed information of what contributions you've made. I think that really helps. And that is really important for this type of project, to really tailor and make sure that really use that extra page and text to highlight your expertise. But I would say if you think you have a really innovative, good idea, submit. That's kind of my mantra is just, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take, right? So.
Great, thank you.
Just to add something really quickly to what Sarah just said, there's no specific format for this. So you can put in a paragraph that says why I am the best person to do this in the proposal if you want. Like there's actually is a required section that says why this is suitable for a new innovator, and putting something in to say, look, this is going to allow me to branch out in a new direction, do something that I'm uniquely situated to do and that nobody else has done and almost nobody else can do. Just spell that out for the reviewers is totally fine. So there's a lot more flexibility. Don't feel constrained, by any format. Try to get this picture across the things that we've been saying in any way that you can.
Any other questions? Do we have anything from the online? Okay. Okay. Yeah, if you have any other questions, if you're online, you have any other questions, unmute yourself and. Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to go on. Just very quickly, thank you so much for all those comments. That was some fantastic information. Really good information about these. I'm not going to go through these in any kind of detail. I just kind of want to skim through the rest of this. As we mentioned, the NIH Reporter website, there was a handout. We'll provide that online as well. I mean, when we send it out to participants, the PowerPoint, there's a lot of great information on there, and these are some of the key questions you can ask on there. One thing, there is one feature that the handout doesn't mention, or at least I don't believe it mentions, is the matchmaker, which is a fairly new feature, which is a really great way to be able to go in there. You can actually plug in, for example, if you have a one-page specific aims, you could put that in there. You could put a paragraph of your research summary or whatever, and it will provide you with information that includes things like, has this been funded before, or even has similar projects been funded before, and what institutes are funding them. So it's a good way to start, right? We have the NIH regional seminar coming up in November, and if you are willing to volunteer to help out, there is a discount available for the volunteers, but you need to get this signed up by tomorrow. So this is especially a great seminar if you are fairly recent to the NIH in terms of finding out about it. I've gone to one and just absolutely recommend it. We mentioned the program officers, and I know, a lot of the experiences you hadn't actually connected beforehand, but regardless, if, even within your own institutes that you're interested in, it's good to start making those connections. Rachel, do you want to say anything real quick about that sort of?
To call your attention to these 3 blocks in the order that they appear. Do not call a program officer or say, I'm going to be in DC next week, can we get together? It's important to email them in advance with a little bit of information about what you would like to talk about, and ask them what would be a convenient time to call, or if you are going to be in DC in the next 2 months or something like that. If you have an advance idea, it's always good to give them a big lead time. But they are very helpful, and it may, as Sarah said, it may not be specific to the high risk, high reward program, but just in general, having those relationships are important throughout your career.
Thank you. If you are going to be meeting with them, let's say, you've sort of gone through sort of the emails and calls, and you have an opportunity to go and you want to meet with them, there is a program that you can actually get some assistance, travel assistance, for meeting. So I'll just throw that out there. Just keep the name in mind, the TRIPS program, and we can give you some more information about that. One other item here is that there is some information online available to ASU specifically on sort of our series. It may not apply specifically to a lot of these programs, but there's some really useful information just about NIH in general through this. And other than that, if you are interested in any of these, please let us know. We would just kind of like to sort of get a sense of, either myself or Rachel in particular, get a sense of who might be applying to these or might be even just interested in the first place. And if you have any questions about the limited submissions to the Early Independence Award, definitely you can contact Haley. All right. Thank you so much for this, and good luck.